Good morning and good evening, everyone, and a warm welcome. Thank you for joining us again for this second section of the lecture series on the state of architecture in South Asia, where we are looking at young emergent practices in the region. As you know, in the first round, starting in September to December, we had 12 speakers. And now from January, late January today, to the end of March and early April, we're going to have 12 more speakers as part of this series. And I think in the 24 presentations that we're going to see at the end of this academic year, so to speak, it's an incredible range. And it's very exciting just to see how another generation in South Asia is picking up a range of complex issues and addressing them as challenges. And emerging from that are multiple modes of practice, multiple forms of engagement, which really point to great potential in the way this transitioning landscape in South Asia will transform in the future. Today we have two firms speaking, or three practitioners and two firms. And what is very interesting is they both share a deep commitment to the public realm. Our first speaker is Mehreen Mustafa. Mehreen is an architect, a cultural heritage consultant, and an academic. She currently is working with ArchiTalk as principal architect. And she serves on a number of organizations, there are NGOs, foundations, which engage in the public realm with questions of culture, heritage, and a gamut of other issues. And she's been engaged with an organization called the Punjab Tourism for Economic Growth Project as a consultant architect. She has also taught at the Institute of Art and Culture and Punjab University as an assistant professor. And as a practitioner, she's been involved in an incredible range of urban projects based on touristic and protected sites in Pakistan, across a whole range of places, including Lahore, Taxila, and many others, too long to sort of really list here. She's presented her research nationally and internationally and has been writing. She's been participating in conferences in Europe, in China, but she also has been capturing this through a series of papers to address some of these sort of experiences. And so it's a very interesting practice of both the engagement in the academy, but with agencies both at the national and international level, and taking that back again, I suppose, folding it in her teaching in very substantial ways. Our second firm that's sort of presenting is called Made in Mumbai. And this firm, Mayuri Sisodia and Kalpit Ashar, they founded it in Mumbai. And it's based in Mumbai. And they are really interested in exploring the role of architecture in shaping the public realm of our cities. So they come to it really through identifying questions of infrastructure, et cetera, that have fallen between the cracks, and it doesn't really fall in any professional purview, and architects have been absent. And this has sort of propelled them in a way to address these sorts of questions. And so they are working with a whole range of agencies, and they've been engaged, which is in some ways not so common, unfortunately. They've been engaged with government agencies in many cities, trying to get them to make the shift in culture, in looking at bringing design to very simple infrastructure, which otherwise gets no attention from the profession. And their work has been recognized and exhibited in the Tallinn Architecture Biennale, the London Design Biennale, and has got some visibility. They also received a Social Innovators Award for the year 2016 from the Prime Minister of India, the Ministry of External Affairs, and the NITI Aayog, which is what has replaced our Planning Commission. They practice in Mumbai, and through their practice and teaching, they're involved in teaching at institutions in Mumbai. They reinforce and popularize and bring to visibility within the profession within students and another generation, the importance of looking at these different forms of infrastructure in the city. So in some ways, both these practices have a similar concern for the city, one through the lens of heritage conservation, but also in a way that it addresses the public realm, and in the other case through very nuts and bolts infrastructure questions, which address the evolving contemporary city in South Asia. So one looks forward to these presentations, and to, I hope we can have some time for a good discussion at the end. So with that, Mehreen, I'm going to thank you for doing this and invite you to make your presentation, and then followed by that, Mayuri and Kalpit, we look forward to hearing from you. So thank you very much, and thank you everyone for being here.
Thank you. I hope my screen is visible and I'm also audible. Yeah. Is that so?
Very good, Mehreen.
Okay.
You might just want to be a little closer to your mic. You're a little soft. Thank you.
Okay. So hello, my name is Mehreen, but today, rather than presenting my own personal expertise on heritage, I shall be more talking about my practice as an architect, as I am involved with the Architalk. So before starting my presentation, I would just like to briefly introduce the consultancy, which is funded by this architect Mirza Hamad Hussain and myself in 2012. The consultancy is actually based in Lahore, and the firm is involved in the design, research, and construction of many mega as well as small-scale projects. And also its services for the projects range from residential, educational, public, recreational to other sectors. And we provide our consultancy with the help of our 3 units, namely design and turnkey unit, building and construction unit, and academic and research units. So both of our, 3 of our units are actually linked with the company's 3 core principles, which are contextual sensibility, social responsibility, and nexus of research and practice. And I hope in all the projects that I'm going to present, you are going to see a glimpse of all these 3 core principles as well. So basically my presentation revolves around myself presenting the 4 projects, where I shall be talking in detail about the first 2 projects. Both of them are school, and I shall be quickly skimming through the second 2 projects, which deals with the urban scale due to the lack of time. So talking about the first project is the slum school project. So it is a kind of a project where the process is more important than the end product. And it is a project where the community-based participatory research and design actually informs and lead the design process as well. So the project was actually an experimental collaborative social design project. And the main aim was to conduct the community-based research in order to develop an adaptable, portable, and contextually sensitive school unit for the underprivileged students of the informal settlements. And basically the idea stems from us as the people, as the students of the city of the Lahore, and our observations that basically our city and the other cities are usually designed to accommodate the people having, money. And often the development projects also often ignore the marginalized community, informal community also one of them. And this deprivation actually comes specifically in terms of infrastructure and human development. And the project also wrestle with this age-old dialogue, which talks about whether you should see slums as a problem or as a solution. Where in this project, we saw the slum as a solution, because we saw that they are providing a very affordable housing option for the underprivileged communities which are residing in Lahore as well. So with our general understanding of what a slum is, defined by the UN Habitat and other multiple agencies, we also wanted to understand what is a slum specifically in the context of our city, which is Lahore. And while doing our research, we came to know that even in Lahore, there are 2 types of slums. One which we have termed as the formal Kachi Abadi or the formal slums, and another one which we called as informal Kachi Abadis or informal slums, because they are very distinct in their characteristics. As you can see, the formal Kachi Abadi or the formal slum is a kind of a slum which is recognized by the state. It is very permanent in its habitation. It has a very high land use density. The infrastructural facilities are in a better shape, and they are usually product of a migration which happened during 1947's partition. So there are usually generations of refugees which are living inside the camps. On the other hand, in the informal Kachi Abadis are the kind of slums which are unrecognized by the states. They are very temporary in their habitation. They have very low land use density. There's minimum or no infrastructure available. And actually they are product of urbanization, you can say. And so thus they are, usually occupied by nomads, gypsies, lower income section, which is migrating from rural areas to the urban areas, and also recently by Afghan refugees as well. So with this, general as well as very specific understanding of the slum, we move to our sites, which you can see is located on a very huge chunk of land. Now, this chunk of land is dedicated for cities, current as well as future commercial as well as recreational need. Here you can see a expo center which is already built there. This is the only expo center which the city of Lahore has. Then we have one of the largest mall of the Lahore city, again placed on this huge chunk of land. And then we can see these empty plots as well. Now even these empty plots are also dedicated for the future development growth of the city as well. So we were very curious when we started working on the site, because we thought, how is it possible that the community slum dwellers get hold of this site? But then while we were researching, we came to know that actually these slum dwellers are facilitated by the city municipality, because they are actually facilitating them to settle on the site in order to retain control over the land, and also to avoid any land grabbing by other land grabbing mafias, a practice which is very common in the city of Lahore as well. And also we as a team, of course, think that education is a basic human right. But while doing our community-based participatory research, we also came to know that the kids of these slum dwellers were already going to the nearby school, where they were facing a lot of discrimination. As the children of the other parents, the parents of the other children were complaining to the school authority that if the school has not stopped giving admission to the slum dweller kids, they are not going to send their students, their children to the school as well. And also while doing our research, we came to know that these kids are not just kids, they are also earning member of their societies, their families as well. And since they are living in an informal Kachi Abadi, so they have to move from one place to another place once or twice a year as well. So the conventional school building and conventional education model is just not suitable for them as well. And also we thought that already there were classes, they were being conducted by an organization at this area for these slum dwellers. But we thought that maybe this school is going to give them a more respectable space. And our prediction came true, because when we placed this school on the site as well, the number of admissions has increased drastically as well. So our process of design actually was started by learning from the community, learning about their perspective on life, the socio-spatial dynamics of the informal settlements as well. And then we started to build our collaborations with the community members as well as the organization who are already working on similar issues as well, rather than reinventing the wheel again. So before we started our design, we produced these two manuals, which were manifestation of our understanding of what informal settlements are, what are their spatial dynamics. And also these two manuals are very crucial, since they're guiding us in devising the three design core principles based on which we have developed and we have designed our slum school. So the first key principle was adaptability, that we wanted our school to be adaptable, multi-purpose, responsive to the community need. We don't want it to be just a place for simply learning, but we wanted it to be a place for extracurricular activities. We wanted it to be a place where community meetings can happen, where there are gatherings, where the school can be used as a gathering place for the community as well. So as you can see, we have implemented this aspect of adaptability into the facade as well, where we have those partial as well as full length openings, which are very responsive to the climate, temperature as well as activity which is going to happen inside as well as outside of the city. Then the adaptability aspect also came forward in terms of layout, furniture, and function of the space, since we are using the movable pallets as a fixture rather than table and chairs. So these, as you can see, if you want a normal classroom setting, you can simply lay the pallets at the top of each other, and you can have a scenario where a regular classroom can happen, and then you can again play with those pallets to create a very informal kind of learning environment. And then maybe if you want a performance to happen, you can simply put the pallets around the periphery of the school interior, and then you can have your stage at the center as well. And again, there was adaptability aspects in terms of elements and material as well. For example, you can see in the picture that the window is not just being used as a window, but it is a kind of a thing which is also being used as a table, and also in many aspects, it was also used as a bench as well by the student. The second key design principle was portability. It was very obvious because we were dealing with informal kachi abadi or informal slum, where we saw that there are the people who are going to move once or twice a year. So we wanted the school to be mobile so that it can be, moved from one place to another place, and it can be installed, dismantled, and reinstalled as well. So the structure was designed in a way that it can be assembled and dismantled on the site as well. And also it has wheels, so even if you want to move it on the site to find a suitable location, you can just push it, you can move it, and then you can lock it to stay at the place as well. And the third and the last key design principle was that it should be sensitive to the context, in the term that we are going, and we did, employ the local and low-cost material and construction techniques, and we relied on minimum and existing infrastructure resources. So for example, as you can see in the picture, there's this big shopping mall, big both in terms of its scale and everything else. And then there are these small huts by the slum dwellers as well, which they call as chugis. So we wanted our school to be of a scale and size that it is not going to overshadow their built environment, yet it is going to retain its own distinct identity as well. And then we also made sure that we use material which are very local, and the material with which the slum dwellers are, they know how to use them, they are comfortable with. For example, we use bamboos, we use ropes, we use fabric, and we also use raw and thatch. And these are all the kinds of material with which all the slum dwellers build their own jhugis or the huts, as you can see. And also we were very well aware of the fact that there is going to be no energy source which is going to power the school. So what we did that we used the passive design techniques. We made sure that the full length and the partial windows can provide cross ventilation. We gave a gap in between the walls and the roof so that stack effect can happen. And again, because we knew that the school is going to be placed on a road which is very well carpeted, so our school doesn't have any floor. It only has the pallets which are again movable. So we assumed that happened as well. Whenever it rains, the water simply can skim through the pallets, leaving the activities which is going inside the slum school, undisturbed. So this was very much about the first project. It's going on well. It's working on the site, and we hope to build many more such schools across the informal settlements in Punjab. For sure, we wanted to experiment with more kind of forms and more kind of materials, but we wanted these three key principles to stay and guide us as well. Now, the second project that I'm going to present is again a school, but it is a different school with a very different issue, because here in this project, what we did that we tried to explore the original material and elements. Why? Because if you ever visit the city of Lahore, this is the kind of architectural language and material exploration that you are going to witness in mid and high rise. And this kind of architectural image is generated, and it's a reflection of our own, social thought process, where we think that if we have to be modern and if we have to look modern and then we must use the materials which are imported, which we term as modern. So we wanted to sort of explore that issue as well. So our main design challenge was to respond to this South Asian complex, which even we as architects have, and to experiment with the traditional and regional material and elements to cater to the contemporary design and social needs. So what we did in this project is that we started our project with the amalgamation of regional material and elements. So for the regional material, what we did that we used brick, but not just as a masonry material, which is a common practice, but also as a material which we can apply on the facade as well. And then we picked up the element of Jharoka and also another traditional building craft, which is fretwork. And then we evolved it further to design and develop our facade and layout of the building as well. So if you all know, or if you don't know, then Jharoka actually is a projected upper story window of a building, which often overlooks the street or market or court space or any other open space as well. So we wanted to revive that regional element, and we wanted to use it again as a threshold space in an educational building, as a space where people or the students can interact, they can learn from each other, and they can also learn from their surrounding as well. But what we did was that instead of using expensive material like wood or stone, what we did that we used brick to design and construct those Jharokas as well. And of course, we also played with their architectural language as well, and we modified their design as well. So basically what the project did was that it took brick as a module, and the modulation resulted in the form of selected Jharokas. And then these Jharokas, as well as the brick as a module, also helped us in sculpting the layout, form, and facade of the building as well. So for example, so in short, the brick also plays a vital role since the local material helped us. The design revolves around that local material. As you can see in the image, that we have used brick as a material where we have designed multiple Jharokas. We have used it on the cornices detail as well. There's a jali pattern which is coming out of its experimentation as well. And then there are window frames as well, which are made using the brick as well. So for example, this is one type of frame, one type of Jharoka, which we named as double frame Jharoka. Then there was a single frame Jharoka. Then there was a horizontal Jharoka. There was square Jharoka. And when all these Jharokas were placed on the facade of the building, this is the kind of result that we have received. Also, we employed the traditional building craft of fretwork, which is called jali. But again, rather than using expensive marble stone, we used brick, and it worked very well. And all this exploration actually resulted in a kind of a building which is ground plus 5 stories, and it sits on the site area of 24.9 canals, and it has all the educational facilities like auditorium space, like academic section, sports section, and administrative section as well. The third project that I'm going to present is the ski resort. And this project actually explored the context and topography of the site to revive the tourism. Why? Because this site is based in Swat, Malamjaba, and it was destroyed and it was shut down for years since the occupation of Swat by Taliban in 2008. And it is also one of the 2 only ski resorts that we have in Pakistan. So here the main challenge was how to use design and the spatial facilities to revive the tourism again, and also how to design, and create a serene as well as calm experience for the tourists of the area as well. So what we did was that we divided the site into the 2 sections, and it was also guided by the topography of the site, where at the top we have the sloped or the ski slope top. And there we only gave facilities like chairlift and a very informal and small food or restaurant zone. And we used the bottom to give all the required and necessary special amenities such as ski shops, such as a restaurant and adventure zone. And what we did, we took the parking away from all this complex so that the whole experience of being in the ski resort is going to be pedestrian, and you can just walk and navigate through this whole complex and enjoy the natural views as well. Again, one of the challenge, and it was a good challenge we faced, was that this ski resort actually sits on a site of a forest land. So it was strictly forbidden to cut any tree. So all the ski resort was sculpted in between the negative land that was available around the trees as well, in between the trees as well. And again, there was a contextual sensibility in terms of material application. We only use wood and local material because we wanted people to come to the site and not, feel alienated. We wanted them to feel very much at home, because if you see, their vernacular architecture is also an architecture where they are using the stone masonry and wood as well. And again, since there was a site constraint, so most of our buildings which we have built, their roof are being used as a floor as well. So in this ski shop, the roof is also being used as a floor, where people can simply sit, relax, and also they can have a restaurant or a kiosk, and then they can eat there as well. Meanwhile, they'll have a very good view of the ski slope as well as the chairlift which is going above. Now, the last project is a project which we call Art Play, and it is a project where we have used event as a mean to design and reclaim the urban public space. And Art Play basically is an initiative where we use art and local games to empower the local communities to regenerate, transform, and sustain inactive, underutilized neighborhood public spaces into interactive, safe, and playful environment. And under this initiative, so far we have conducted the two projects. The first project is conducted in 2018, and it was called Investigation of and Regeneration of Public Space. And it happened in the low-income neighborhood colony of Sher Shah in Lahore. And it ended up into the public art exhibition, which was held into the two parks, which was located in the Sher Shah colony. And in this project, again, we have used urban exploration and community-based participatory approach as a methodology to achieve our objectives. And the second project that we have conducted under Art Play initiative is parking. And this project basically stemmed from the idea that the city of Lahore, it's becoming big, and it's crawling at an unprecedented growth. And at the same time, the public spaces are shrinking with the same speed as well. And the people do not find sufficient public spaces where they can simply go, relax, and interact with each other. So this project, the parking, it directly addresses that deprivation by creating temporary public space pocket, and it does that by just simply converting the parking spaces into parks simply for a day as well. So here we have introduced activities like quick impression, where two strangers are made to sit in front of each other, and they simply interact with each other by just looking at each other's face and drawing their first impression of the other person as well. Then there's this famous game of hotspot, but we have upscale it to the human level to make it more interactive and interesting. And then there is this famous local game, Sam Siri, which is also known as Snake and Ladder. Again, we have employed on the side and make it big on a human scale to make it more interactive and then to make it more interesting. And then there is a very famous board game, the board game of Ludo. And here is this very linear video, or the place where all these games are placed is a place where usually you will see the park in the vicinity. So we have this game of Snake Ladder. Then there was this exhibition by a very young female artist about the role of the woman. Then there was all the other two activities going on. And then there was this third very spontaneous activity, which was generated by the kid. They were just simply sitting there and they were just, painting their heart out as well. So with all the projects that I have just presented, they do fall into the domain of public rev. Few of them are distinct in terms of the issues that we have faced as an architect or as a consultancy, and then the design approaches that we have adopted. For example, in one project, the community-based participatory approach is leading the whole design project. In another, there was this exploration of regional element and regional material, because we wanted to answer this South Asian complex of using imported material, and this process of Dubaiization that we call it here as well. And in the third one, we were just using design to revive the tourism. And in the last one, we are using event as a mean to create, a temporary space and also to reclaim our public spaces we have in the city of Lahore. So that is it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mehreen. And we will pick up on some of the discussions. It's interesting, the range that you've sort of presented. And what I would be very curious to discuss with you is, you have the work you've done in the Kachi Abadis with a little school, community center, whatever you call it. And then you've done the art play, which are about the temporary, they're transitional solutions, they're ephemeral, they're very light, they're reversible. And then you showed us 2 projects where you emphasized architecture. And I would just be curious to explore with you how these inform each other. Meaning, it's interesting that in the school you emphasized architectural elements, but didn't talk so much about how spaces were organized, whereas the explorations you've done with spaces in this way that they're used for education is quite incredible. So let's pick that up in the conversation. I just wanted to leave that thought with you, because that it's a question I'm sure that's going through everyone's mind. So with that, we will move on to Made in Mumbai, and then we will get together and have a discussion. So over to you guys.
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you so much for inviting us and taking on this conversation on South Asian architecture.
You share that.
Yes.
Nice.
One second.
One second. There's some technical error. We're not able to share our screen.
Yeah. Maybe I can continue a conversation with Mehreen, maybe till they're back, or are you okay now?
Yes.
Yes, no.
Thank you.
Yes, no, wait. Are you able to see a screen?
Yes, you can go full slide now, full, yeah. Thank you. Great, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you.
So we're calling this lecture Liberating the Mundane. By title we mean is in between the comfort of our homes and when we go out of the city and you see these large infrastructural projects, what happens to the city that lies in middle of these two? The city that is kind of fragile, which no one is thinking about, no one is drawing, no one is documenting. And there are no architects and urban designers which are engaged in the kind of shaping of this realm. And if you look at our lives, I mean, both of us, or even a lot of people who live in Mumbai, we're spending a lot of time outside, and we are at home for, let's say, we come home to sleep or just eat, have breakfast, and we leave. So what happens to this city when everyone is, outdoors in the city full day? what does the city become for you? And what is the role of an architect?
Almost city kind of starts functioning like your home, and it becomes important that what kind of city you are living in and what the city is offering to you. So if you generally look at it, our city is usually seen as these engineering solutions, where there are these large infrastructure projects, but they often lack architectural imaginations. They're usually implemented as these copy-pasted designs, and whereas the ground is very complex, and it kind of almost kind of disconnects from the ground reality. And the projects which are there, there is a very complex, diverse things on the ground, and usually there is no kind of acknowledgement which happens about these.
There is a rich kind of an everyday life which is taking place in the fabric of the city, but the designs are kind of alien to that. They almost land like an alien object and never acknowledge that.
And the idea of experience of human body is never considered. So it's always these typical drawings and then they are implemented. But what happens to the humans who are occupying it? Also, there's a compromise on visual identity and language in these public projects. You see the city getting built all over, all the time around you. A city is in a constant process of growth and rebuilding itself, but with a serious compromise on its language, visual identity. And people are considered as threat in public structures. So this is a classic example where often as architects, you are very excited speaking about new ideas. And the first response you get is that, that people will spoil it. People will not, keep it well. They'll vandalize it and things like that.
It's almost as if you're afraid within public buildings, you're afraid of public only. So you're constantly trying to build railings, build fencing and trying to guard the objects from the public life.
And as a result, what happens is we receive a schizophrenic urban form that is vulnerable and alien to its user. So this is one of the image showing, the skywalk, which is talking about movement. There is traffic below. There is a water line of the city, which is going through. There are informal settlements. There is open spaces, urban agricultural grounds. All of it kind of colliding, all of these domains together. And there is literally no one is acknowledging the fact that this is the real ground and how we should be responding to it.
And when we see architect's role as architect and urban designer's role, as something who is able to synchronize this flux, who's able to kind of very gently intervene and make sensitive gestures to kind of synchronize all these domains.
So basically, there are these are the random processes, which shape our everyday urban environments. And especially in Mumbai and many other cities in India, we see that architects and urbanists have almost no access or no role to play. So one of the kind of the example through which these government and the public city projects get implemented is that usually there is a typical drawing made by some engineer from the municipal corporation or development authority. They prepare a BOQ, which is the list of materials, and it goes for a tender. And again, in the tender, it kind of is formatted such that it is only that the contractors would qualify. And literally there is no mention or role of an architect or an urban designer in shaping of these projects. So the kind of form which you see in the city is somewhere what we call it like, the form follows BOQ and BOQ follows contractor. So the contractor designs what are the costs, what are the materials they want to use, and form is kind of an ultimate, kind of a surprise which happens to.
And architects are generally involved in larger projects, which are larger, but small ones which you encounter every day, they have no role to play.
So today's presentation, what we are talking about are these in-between projects, the everyday projects, which are not very large projects like the museums or things which the state has been building, but the regular projects of the city, which all of us experience all the time. And that's where there's kind of a loophole. So what we have been doing as a studio is we felt that literally there is no access. And through series of our exhibitions, manifestos, we are trying to kind of open up this dialogue and that what is the role of an architect in shaping of this everyday realm and why this everyday realm is important. So there are a few projects which we have implemented in last few years where they took them as pilot projects and they said, yes, let architect come on board, where you identify sites, you define programs, and then study the context, and then you propose a typology that what is an appropriate type for the city and what are the design interventions required. Then comes the BOQ, then comes out the tender, and then comes in the contractor. And I think this is a very default kind of a process which should have been there, but somewhere it's kind of, does not exist. So the studio's kind of inquiry usually lies in this idea that how do we create architecture for all, everyday and the public realm? And what role does architectural design play in shaping of our everyday built environment? In today's talk, we are talking about two projects. First, the toilet manifesto, and the second, a street design project in Mumbai. And then we'll be quickly running through few other inquiries and other projects for various municipalities. And lastly, we would like to show the behind the scenes, that what are the processes and the challenges and the kind of the circus which you go through every day in executing these projects. So quickly going on to toilet manifesto. So to achieve universal sanitation coverage and to put focus on sanitation, Prime Minister of India launched Swachh Bharat Abhiyan on 2nd October. It caught a lot of attention and focus, and eventually
the same situation
reoccurred where, there were no architects or contractors, architects not part of the project. Finally, there were a lot of projects were getting built in the city, though the intent was good, but the absence of professionals in the implementation process led to making more disastrous public toilets. This is an example where with the fund of Swachh Bharat, they started cladding the old toilets with Alico bond and everything. And people didn't choose to use them. You could see a person urinating outside on the toilet, but not choosing to go inside into this. Don't touch it. The proposed ideal models of public toilet in India were either cosmetic in nature, and these are some of the examples showing that how they kind of made almost a mimicry out of public toilets by trying to make them look like something else, but not really addressing the fundamental issue with public toilets.
So almost like surface cultural design, the advertisement, the signages, but internally if you moved it was equally dirty. There was no light ventilation, there was no space for people to kind of even, like for the caretaker to sit. The caretaker was cooking inside the toilet or something. So, so I think we went around the city and kind of documented all these projects.
So unfortunately, it led to making mockery of public toilet infrastructure. Even in year 2022, we are deprived of basic sanitation facility in public realm. To address this issue further, our studio framed a toilet manifesto in 2017, where we wanted to look at the idea that how do we create various typology, not just in terms of architecture, but also look at the idea of maintenance, construction methods, several other things which are important in shaping of these public toilets. We worked on a research project, we came up with a publication, and the idea is to create a holistic vision for sanitation infrastructure, which addresses architecture, maintenance model, recycling technology, construction methods, building materials for contemporary public toilets. The project proposed 10 contemporary models of public toilets for urban and rural India. The first looked at idea of portable toilets, second bus stop toilets, using the existing footprint of the bus stops in the city and trying to make hybrid toilets out of it. Third, for railway stations. Fourth, for pavements. Fifth, highways. Sixth, looking at urban toilets where there's a very large footfall and for urban plazas. Looking at traffic islands, spaces for women's facilities, etc. It further went on as a traveling exhibition where we showcase these models.
Various urban bodies, municipalities, urban development authorities. We started presenting it to the people who are actually engaged in making these in every day.
So what was interesting is that the toilets usually have a stigma and they never, they are always hiding, not the good sites are given for toilets. But once they understood what are the types, what the types could do, they started actually offering some of the most important and the visible sites of the city for public toilets. So currently it is commissioned for around 101 sites across India in last 5 years. We have implemented under around 40 sites, and there are 53 sites which are going under construction in different cities. So it started as 10 typologies and now it has grown to around 30 typologies for public.
The idea was to build this 10 types, but as we go to newer city, we find newer condition, newer situation. So each typology modifies and develops into a new type again.
So we'll run through a few of the projects. So this is a project in Jaipur at Rambagh Circle, which is an amalgamation of multiple smaller bus stops. And it had created a large public plaza with a public toilet. And this has become actually a site for youngsters to actually gather for protest, for organizing events, etc. And it's a building which is part of the city. This is in Udaipur at Govardhan Sagar Lake, which is a space where a lot of youngsters, couple come in, and surprisingly, it has become a space for pre-wedding shoots and these couples, using the backdrop of public toilet as a background for their thing. This is a traffic police chowki, a tourist info cell in Jaipur, again on a traffic island. So it's a circular typology with roads going around the sides and people using. There are multiple programs, courtyards, terraces, etc., which provide people a place for pause, within these spaces. This is Ram Nivas Garden in Jaipur. This is opposite Albert Hall, which is usually created as a space for evening cultural events, etc. Some of these images are from the COVID time. They just got over. This
just got done in COVID time, so we don't have photos with them.
So this is Gulab Bagh. A lot of these buildings are also, imagine, they have skylights. They used kind of different facade systems which would breathe in. This is in Mumbai along the Eastern Express Highway. So depending on the city which we are going, we are using different materials. This is in Sikandrabad, outside Sikandrabad railway station. Here we are using slate as a material to create the facade, which is a breathing facade. This is a small video trying to document the building in Sikandrabad and seeing people's response on what they think about it. Being an architect and urbanist, we felt that it's time that we come out of our homes, come out of our practices and see what role can architecture play in shaping the public realm. And that's where we started our journey. Our mission at Urban Loo is to revolutionize the common man's experience of using public toilets. Public toilets are important landmarks of an emerging landscape of any modern city. It speaks volumes of who we are and how we perceive our city to be like.
पहले तो जो है एक कबाड़ खाना था वो पुराना, अब जो है शीश महल लग रहा है, ताजमहल जैसा वो लग रहा है.
The entire building facade is designed with local slate stone from Telangana. The stone facade allows the building to breathe at all levels and thereby removing foul smell from the toilets. It further allows natural light, ventilation and thermal comfort throughout the day, making the building energy efficient.
ऐसे बाथरूम कहीं दूसरी जगह तो नहीं देखा मैंने.
The interiors are designed to give good privacy to its users and at the same time create an airy, bright, well-lit space with natural skylights.
सबसे बड़ा अच्छा बोलूं ये हवा जाने का, बाहर वो अच्छा लाइट है, बहुत अच्छे, हाइजीनिक भी है.
Someone is doing good, we have to be also encourage them. We have to support them. Then only we also develop our India.
इंडिया के लिए तो ऐसे बाथरूम रहना चाहिए, बहुत अच्छी चीज है. ऐसे बाथरूम रहेंगे तो हर कोई अच्छा नीटनेस रखेगा, तो ऐसे और बाथरूम खुलना चाहिए.
Yeah. So just to kind of summarize, so this is just was video from one of the projects, and there are many such typologies which have taken shape in different cities. I mean, for us, people have been praising these projects, but to be frank, I mean, these are just basic standard toilets made with brick, mortar, RCC, you know, regular construction, which they are comfortable with building it. And this is something which needs to be built. It's just that there is a dearth of it and no one is building it around, you know. The next project which we are talking about is the street design project in Mumbai. The project is located, it was a competition by Mumbai Municipal Corporation in 2019 as a part, along with WRI as a street lab project, where we were commissioned to work on Maulana Shaukat Ali Road between the JJ Junction and the Lamington Road at the Grant Road. So it's a 1.5 kilometer long stretch. And as you can see, the interesting part is the one road of a city is actually divided by 4 different wards of the city. And there
we are working with 4 different kinds of hierarchies, like 4 different offices, 4 different ward offices, and all the respective hierarchies.
So it's just the opposite side of the street is different ward, and they have their different kind of requirements, aspiration. And just to give an overview, the kind of number of stakeholders which you need to address with when you're working on street, it's the sewage department, the electric works, traffic, BST, hydraulic, city survey, road departments, etc., etc. And then there are these local users where there are residents, migrant workers, vendors, hawkers, etc. So, I mean, any small kind of intervention really requires kind of an approval from more than 20 to 30 different stakeholders and their interests. So there's a quick video of like around 3-4 minutes trying to show what this context is, video of the everyday life on the street and the kind of interventions which we proposed for this. So this road cuts up this 1 minute clip showing the everyday at Maulana Shaukat Ali Road. So it's not only a road, it's a street, but it's a space, it's almost an extension of a home.
I think part of the old city. So you have all your old city markets, material market, scrap market, wood market, steel market.
Prayers happening on the street, extensions of the store.
The old theatres.
A lot of old theatres. It cuts across the part of the city which is Chor Bazaar itself, old stuff.
So it occurs to the red light district of the
area. So primarily the zone is different kind of influence. You know, one side there's a metro station coming. Second side there are old theatres, red light areas of the city. Third zone is the timber market, metal market, scrap market, and the fourth area is where there are mosques, restaurants, workers areas, etc. So the first step for us it was important to record what the street is. Because if the survey drawing which we received from the municipal corporation just drew 2 lines, the road line and the manholes and the light poles. You know, that's unfortunately, that's how they look at the city. So we started actually document what the city is, started developing different kind of smaller interventions for different stakeholders. The idea was, how do you design a threshold along the footpath and how different kind of user groups can engage with the street furniture.
Like currently, all the domains which exist on the side, the theatre, the migrants, the people, the mosque, prayer, they're all kind of conflicting on site. The idea was to use the medium of urban design or street design to weave all of them together so they don't conflict.
So there are more than actually, I think around 150, 200 such kind of street objects which were designed, which could cater to different kind of sections along the road. This was a movable, the hawkers market. Also, usually in street design, the idea, it's always seen as it's a typical section which runs across 1 kilometer. But as you saw in the video, it's impossible to have a typical kind of a cross section cutting across such kind of, you know.
So this is one scroll we made where every particular condition, we recorded it and kind of saw how the forces could be kind of integrated in that space.
Because there are a lot of domains, you know, there are so many stakeholders, so many domains, and it's important that how do you kind of very sensitively kind of find an in-between way where all of them could find their own space. Then after the design, it went to the different stakeholders, local councillors, commissioners, ward officers, road department. It was also displayed opposite the municipal office and to see people's response and the feedback. People actually started identifying their street with the buildings, because usually in the street project, we just draw the streets, not the buildings. The buildings are something which actually shape the experience of the street around. So after the design stage and the feedback stage, it was further taken to on-site. We're calling it recalibrating, because all that what you draw and think on screen many times does not work on ground, and the ground of demands for something very different. So it was quite an interesting process with some of the construction drawings. So there are more than 100 drawings prepared for a stretch of 1.5 kilometers. And what we're calling it is the idea of these colliding domains needs a solution which kind of bring in peace, for these
harmony between different
processes. So that was the second project. Third, we'll just quickly run into, we just have around 8 minutes. So quickly run into different projects. So,
actually, the toilet manifesto project branched out in different kind of directions. So the municipal corporation said, why don't you build a flood shelter for us? Or, so this was a project which we proposed in Kolhapur, Kolhapur received a lot of floods. So this was a
flood shelter project. Then an annex building to the Kolhapur Municipal Corporation for the Citizen Facilitation Center, trying to bring in a good interface with the public and the municipality. This is for Rajasthan creating a Rasoi Yojana Kendra, which is in the midday meal program, which provides subsidized meal. This was one of our early projects which we did at students, the Banganga crematorium, looking at a crematorium along the sea edge. Then we worked in 2018 on Jaipur crematorium, trying to create a model crematorium for Jaipur. And currently we are working in Hyderabad, the Hyderabad crematorium. The project is located in Secunderabad, and trying to look at idea of crematorium not as a large institution, but the smaller kind of pavilions in the garden across the city. Then there are other projects which the municipalities are building with is as a part of the Yatradham Vikas Board, especially Gujarat, which is the pilgrimage infrastructure. So here we are working on the project in Kutch for a lake for the Narayan Sarovar. Then
we're doing 3 projects. There. First is looking at Pune. First is looking at this shrine of Vallabhacharya, which is around a tree in a very deserted island, and is looking at the temple, developing the temple complex and designing infrastructure for the pilgrims. Second is actually there's a lake called Narayan Sarovar, and the temple complex is around that. It's looking at the designing of the lake condition and inducing kind of designing the ghats and inducing infrastructure needed for the pilgrimage. Third is the design of the temple complex, Trivikramraji temple complex. That also has 2 very beautiful shrines. So we look, go next. We're looking at this temple complex where we are conserving the fort wall and the important kind of heritage structures within the complex. And wherever we are finding smaller gaps, we are inducing functions or programs which are needed in the everyday life of the pilgrim.
So these were different kind of projects. So I think what we showed you was just the nice part of the presentation. And now we want to take you through some surprises, like, literally what goes on behind these projects. So the idea is the government has a lot of money. They've been spending on these lots of projects like public toilets, function halls, markets, sports hall, crematorium, disaster relief centers, citizen centers, etc. And as a studio, we try to engage with them to develop new kind of models as pilot projects, which could set certain examples where, and also to bring up their standards, because they believe that why do you need architects for any of these projects? So what you saw, those models was some of these typologies. So, and now I think few slides we would like to take you through that what are the challenges which you face. So one of the challenges which you face is that the access to any young practice is through competitions. As students, that's what you believed in. But there are absolutely no design competitions in the city for architects. And if they do happen, they are rarely implemented. So this is an image when we were in 3rd year of architecture, somewhere in 2004. We won a competition of a commission to build. They never built it because the regulation said that you could actually get more FSI if you would build a parking lot on a crematorium. So they discarded the crematorium project and shifted their focus. Luckily, this project found a way after 18 years in Robert Stephens' book, Bombay Imagine. And we made this model of the crematorium after 18 years. Second is the professional engagement, for these everyday projects, there's literally no framework to engage architects and urban designers. So whenever we are working on this project, the first thing they're asking is, how do we engage you into these projects? So it's a slow kind of...
engage you in terms and condition of a contractor, which is not valid for us, that there's actually a void in the kind of framework which is needed to employ get architects.
So other than design, this is another battle which you are kind of fighting as an architect. So this is just from last January, where architects asked BMC to change the tender norm, that we are not contractors, we are professionals who design the city. Third, most of the project which happens, whether there's a need or not, but they are seen part of the political propaganda, completely disconnected from the ground reality. Then when you engage into any of these projects, they are looking for quick architecture. And as you know, architecture is a slow process. It requires time. And if designed in hurry, it results in bigger failures. So this is an image where I'm explaining these models to various municipal commissioners and development authorities in Hyderabad. And the next day it comes in news, 3,000 public toilets planned, And then immediately on the next day, we are asked that within 7 days, you have to submit a BOQ, bill of quantities.
And they put you in a situation where you answer us, how will you build 3,000 toilets? I'm like,
within 1 month.
Within 1 month, you need to build them.
Yeah. And then you see news after 6 months saying that, the municipality has built a lot of these projects, but they are dysfunctional, and then they realize, we should have rather built few of them and not. Anyways, but this is the project which we did not accept, and we said we cannot build 3,000.
We'll do few within one city.
Within one city. So we are working on around 50 sites in Hyderabad, and it's still going on. News is from...
It's been 3 years and it's still going on.
Still going on. Next is, there's no time frame for implementation. So there is this hurry when it comes that, they want things in one night. Literally, they're looking for ready-made projects. But so this right kind of a table is trying to show that every week we are shooting these emails, with construction status and status report to the principal secretary saying that, it's going really slow and things like that. And it's kind of an endless process.
Also, for some of the smaller projects, they always get a lowest category contractor. For larger projects, of course, they are getting, big contractors. But for small ones, the contractors are not interested in to apply. So that's why the construction quality always is compromised.
Very poor. We'll just take 2 minutes. Then they are looking for ready-made design. So in order to build fast, the governments are looking for ready-made products and not site-based typologies. Whereas the cities are highly complex and demand contextual responses. Our entire kind of thesis on these typologies is that you require contextual response, and hence we keep on building and making new typologies which integrate with the urban form. Then there are certain projects which are these shortcut projects. Now this is example from Mumbai. There are 3 projects built in Mumbai on the Western Express Highway, where they appointed us just as architects for concept design. We were given just 1 week's time. We prepared a concept drawing, left is our drawing. And then they directly built it without construction drawings, without design resolution, And because they thought these projects are just about the elevation, and they believe that, the elevation is good, we'll make this elevation, literally like that. So this is a classic example from concept design directly built.
Actually, inside they made a wall inside the facade. This facades were actually supposed to breathe and ventilate the entire toilet. So inside and there were designs in the visual you can't see from outside twins. But they've made a wall inside thinking, abhi kaam ho gaya, elevation is done.
Then there are projects, so many projects where there's replication of design. Now this is in Rajasthan. We are not located there, and after a few months we come to know that the projects are copied, and
there are 5 more buildings.
5 more buildings built in the same type. And the thing is, they are shrinking it as per the site. So this is you can see the cross section, which it's looking at the tread and riser ratio, and the right side, after making the building, they realize
it's shrunk. So
it's shrunk, and it has become dangerous for anyone to climb.
It's shrunk
like that. So many of these projects, they realize, I think contractors, after the project is built, that we would have better had architect and followed the drawings. Then there are some ghost projects, So several projects start as these electoral promise, but never get completed if the party fails to return to power. The new government abandons these projects and thereby wasting public money. This is a project just outside Bandra-Worli ceiling, just at the toll gate. It was a 2-year-old project. The party kind of didn't manage to change, and the other party didn't want to build this project. Just 30 seconds. Then there are some fake projects. This is another project looking at the Bandra-Worli ceiling. When you cross the toll. And this was a site offered to us where it was a part of a garden, and we created this large kind of a plaza as a viewing deck towards the sea.
And there's a section like that was supposed to go and tuck in the slope and not just become an amphitheater in the landscape.
So these are the kind of projects where they actually, we worked on the concept design, the BOQs, the structural drawings prepared, and what you see, they promised to build that. They got a very good funding sanctioned for that project. And what you see on the left side image is the kind of the version what the government has built again. So there are many such projects where they show something and then they build something else. What it does is actually, people are not able to use it, but another thing is also affecting the cityscape and the urban form by a lot of these kind of
remain there as a material onto that beautiful site.
So, and just last, I think this slide we're talking about that. Then there are abandoned projects, and this is very interesting case. So what you see on the left is a proposed design. They got good budgets to build this. Then what you see in the center is what they implemented, a typical box. They inaugurated it, it came in news, and they never opened it to public.
And it has decayed just being closed.
It has decayed just being closed. The public was never able to use it. The money was consumed and it is lying like a ruin. This is again in Bandra. And then there are projects which are on a waiting list for grand inauguration. So lots of projects, when they've realized, these are very interesting building, and they keep wondering, whether should be open to public or not. And then they are searching for the right candidate to inaugurate. So there are so many projects that literally waited for almost half a year, 6 months, and delaying, the handover to the public.
On the doors and all, because never opened for so long.
Yeah. And this is the last slide, So the challenge is really this kind of an elaborate and this shifting bureaucracy. And this kind of thick bureaucracy, which becomes a hindrance at every stage. The officers keep getting transferred, and architect has to start afresh all the time. So what we have done on this slide is actually we just taken some of the profile images from the WhatsApp groups, and you can see that they are actually interested in everything in this world other than doing their work, literally. And it becomes like a big challenge.
Yeah, if you ask them, we need 5 days, 1 week to submit a drawing, they'll not give it to you. If you say there is a festival and I have to go for a wedding, or or I have to go to Vaishnav Devi Yatra, they'll be more than happy. You take 2 weeks.
So you give a reason of a family or some religious festival, they are ready to give you time. But as a professional, if you ask for time, you'll not get it. So this is kind of the reality and the circus which you kind of experience every day, and it's a big challenge. And so we are kind of trying to navigate and find our way through all of these things. And we would like to thank all of you all for giving us time. And I think this is the last slide.
The last.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
So if you could just stop sharing, then we can.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah. Hi, Mehreen. So you're up on. Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, so thanks. Let's use the little time we have for discussion for, after 2 very thought-provoking and really interesting presentations. I'm going to try to focus in my comments on just 2 of your projects each, which is what, and we can refer to the others. And I just want to start with kind of offering some, let's say, just reflections and impressions and thoughts that came to mind. And the whole idea of this discussion, the whole forum, is really to create, in a productive way, some feedback loops, but also to create a community of architects across South Asia, because there are many challenges that we share. So, Mehreen, I already began to, comment between the 2 presentations, and one found the projects really fascinating. And I think I was very struck by the fact that you had 2 projects, the first and the last one, which really actually address a critical question that we should be thinking about as architects, is how does one design transitional solutions, right? How does one, using kind of a temporal imagination where its life cycle of materials are limited, etc., that you reverse it? It actually, in some ways, and I think it also resonates for me with, the work made in Mumbai showed, which is the notion of, I think there is more value that we should place in provisional solutions, because they are also signs of optimism. And I'll come in a second in how I read the Made in Mumbai projects, because I think provisional solutions, we don't pay enough emphasis to. And for me, the first project you showed, Mehreen, is very much about that. It creates a form of elegance. It creates a place and an identity. It creates a very powerful counterpoint to the tyranny of images, as you alluded to. You called it Dubaiization of our landscapes. I call it the tyranny of images. And you created a kind of wonderful counterpoint to it in very light ways. And then you showed us the school and you emphasized architecture very much, I think in beautiful ways, because you actually did take on the challenge of the tyranny of images, and you responded to local materials and trying to create a typology of converting wooden jharokas into ones in brick. So they were very deft architectural moves there. But what I was missing in that project, and I would like you to talk a little bit about, is also, I mean, did you also innovate in space? Because you're doing such wonderful things with space and in just the idea of learning. And so I would like you to just reflect a little bit on that. And then I'll just sort of, let me just comment also on Made in Mumbai. And so, you know, when we talk about provisional solutions, of course, my first, response to your projects is that, my God, this is very material, you know, this is very solid. But then I look at it and I think about it and I think, my God, in a city like Mumbai, you have to confront it on those terms. If you did something light like Mehreen did in Mumbai, it would get lost in about 8 hours or something like that, correct? And so you also need to confront it with the power of architecture. In fact, what you started your slide, slides describing the problem reminded me of my friend Arjun Appudurai, who called those the weapons of mass construction, what was happening in our cities. So in a sense, you're countering that through other weapons, but more beautifully crafted weapons of construction, right? And I think it's very provocative what you said, you called it form follows BOQ. I would, after your last slide, call it forms follows bureaucracy, because that rolls into it, all sorts of protocols, right? So that's a much more powerful, I think, emblematic formulation of what you were trying to say. And I think it's also provocative how you pick up on the notion of in-between spaces. And this is, again, I think for all of us in South Asia, and I think, Mehreen, your presentation also pointed to this. And actually, I think this is a global phenomena where there is a whole kit of parts that make the city, whether it's a small bridge over a canal, whether it's a culvert, whether it's the railing, whether it's compound walls. These have fallen out of any design profession's gaze, right? In some parts of the world, landscape architects are beginning to pick up on this because it's connected much more to the landscape. Architects don't pay attention to it. And then, like you said, some engineer draws it up for other reasons, and it actually creates discontinuities in the city. And so therefore, even identifying this kit of parts that is under no one's gaze. You've identified some looking at Mumbai, etc. But I think there's even a much more expansive repertoire that we can sort of engage with. So to go to very specific questions to get you both to respond, and then we can have the conversation, is Mehreen, I'd like you to just say that in your own learning from the art play and from the project you did in the informal Kachi Abadi, not the formal Kachi Abadi, what are lessons that might inform what you did in that school? Or maybe it did not, and maybe in the future it will. So I would just be curious, and how, I often think, my God, in that school, what if the top 2 floors of the terrace of that school was designed as a temporary structure in the beautiful way that you did with bamboo, so that as the school's needs changed, maybe that floor could transform. Why don't we start creating hybrids like that? And then I think for Made in Mumbai, I think just my lead question would be that I was struggling with the fact that you were also deploying these weapons of mass construction, but with architectural input in them, right? And I mean, you're almost deploying them at that scale. When a war breaks out, you go whole hog. It's like what they're talking about Ukraine. We need 400 more tanks, right? You're saying we need 1,000 more toilets, and you're going whole hog. Now, the conflict in my mind there is twofold. One is that the typologies you've really developed out of a very specific condition in Mumbai, where you need the architecture to confront a presence, then you deploy that in many other parts of the country, partly because then the bureaucracy overtakes you. And is there a way to counter that? Are we able to work more nationally like that, or are we creatures who have to be more local? It's just a conflict in my mind. But I think what is the beautiful thing about your projects is that they're all Trojan horses. I see your projects as Trojan horses, where the toilet gets embedded in something else. And so if the need for the toilet goes, they're beautiful buildings that can become community centers, that can become office buildings, that can even be bought by someone to have a bungalow for their home and they can recycle it. And that's, I think, the beauty of it. And I'd just like you to reflect on it. So let's start with Mehreen.
Okay, thank you. So coming to your first question, I think the projects, specifically the Slum School project and the Art Play initiative, also transformed and informed our practice in a very different way, because while we are studying architecture, we are made to believe that we should believe in the idea of being the gods. We are the one who creates. We are the one who has the power to create. And we are the only one who understand how to create and what to create and how to respond to the people need. But while we were working on these two projects, we learned that it is also possible that God's prediction and God's understanding can be wrong, which was very much strong in many aspects of these two, these two projects. So these two projects also taught us how to take a step back as an architect, how to let the people, not design maybe, but how to also let people create strategies for you, open windows for you, using which you can, propose very innovative solutions as well. And also, yes, because while we were actually working for the research project in the informal settlements, there was a very small jhuggi structure that we were trying to understand. So we, the architects who have taken 5 years education, were not able to, resolve a very small technical joinery details. So what we saw, that there was a girl who came, who was hardly 6-year-old, and she simply just pick up few stones and she simply pick up few sticks, and she binds both of them together, and she resolved all this problem for us as well. So specifically in my practice, I think, other than this aspect, that the one you have highlighted, that we also need a very maybe short-term solution, or we need a transitional solution. I think what we need to think also is that in the South Asian context, we don't need to have this very global approach. We need to have a very regional, site-specific, community-based approach, and that approach can actually help us achieve very successful solutions as well. So this is a very important lesson that I have learned in these, two projects, the engagement with the people and letting the people take over, because I think it also, give them the ownership. I'm like, they are more close to the project, because maybe they felt that they are not just the end user, but they are also the ones who are involved in the creation of all this design process and everything as well. But while we're talking about the other school, yes. You wanted to say something?
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. And when we are talking about the other project, it was the Lahore City School. And this was a kind of school where we have the client who again came from Dubai and came from different areas. And he was, very much against using the idea of brick, because he actually, felt that if we are going to use the brick on the facade, it is going to devalue the building. The people are not going to come in, because they are maybe kind of thinking that this is a kind of a building which is, built by some ignorant and everything. So for that, I think those kinds of innovation took a step back, and we just simply, focused on creating a space or creating a facade or creating, layout design for the person, which are just very aesthetically pleasing in terms of how he's going to see that the building. Because I also believe that, we don't need to have a very unilateral approach, design approach for all the projects. Each project is kind of like an individual having its own demands and needs, and that need can be totally useless or unworthy for the another project as well.
No, I think that's well said. And I mean, I think what's very nice even about the little intervention you did in the ski resort is you made the terrace a very usable space. And so the little building just sits in the landscape, which is very nice. But I think will frame what you're saying another way, which is what you're really saying is that in some situations, architecture is always not the solution. Sometimes not doing the architecture is the better solution, right? And in some cases, using architecture, but articulating it differently, where you have to instrumentalize it because either it's the aspiration of the client or it's the function, then how do you do the best within using architecture as the instrument? And I think that's a very nice sort of way, and that's what makes your project so disparate that you could have presented the first and the last project only, and we would have had one perception of you as an architect, and you could have presented the two other projects in another presentation, and we would have imagined you as another kind of architect. So the fact that you all can shift gears like that, and sometimes even confront the question that architecture is not the solution, is very commendable. So thank you very much for that. So over to you guys to respond to
your comments about the Trojan horse. I think that's very correct, because for us, the toilets have become almost like an excuse to actually intervene in the everyday spaces, where people can rest, they can wait, they can speak to people, they can look at the city gaze by, the city move by. So it's almost like an excuse to build in the urban spaces. And
actually, when we are designing, we are just seeing these kind of creatures, and we always believe that architecture should talk, it should be able to talk to you in some way, and that's why they kind of behave like that. And I think the first question is that, do they really work? Because we started as these 10 typologies. And absolutely they cannot work. They can, that's why they are almost kind of mutating. So if you see, even we worked on the fundamental idea of a typology for a pavement, but depending on the width of the pavement, the flux of people, the flow, it varies. So now for pavement, we have some 6-7 typologies, depending on the footfalls and the scale of the project and things like that. So it keeps growing. So for us, they are mutating. The idea of the amphitheater remains, and then it kind of mutates depending on whether it's on a corner of a plot or on a one-sided plot.
So
things like that.
Yeah. So I'm happy you use the word mutate, because I was going to use it, but I was a bit wary about using it to not offend you. But you're absolutely right. The danger with the mutation is it can also mutate into a monster, right? So the question is, so I mean, we are having a productive discussion, and I think what you've done is so commendable to be able to scale it up at that point, and even so, if the mutations sometimes happen too fast, you have distortions, which is what I think you're experiencing. So therefore, what as a community of architects, because I think what you're setting up as a precedent is really quite remarkable. And I mean that completely from my heart. I've done the introduction for your book. So I believe very much in what you say. But I just wonder, is it a good point to pause and think, have we unleashed something that might go out of control? And if we have to course correct, how do we do it? So there are two ways of course correcting. One is to, based on the learning, come up with new imaginaries, right? In terms of the architecture, maybe simplify the typologies and not have this complexity so the distortions can be minimum. Maybe that's one way of doing it. The other way to do it, as a planner would tell you, is to embed it much more firmly into the protocols of bureaucracy, which means, like bylaws are. Right now, it's some municipal commissioner between his puja yatra and his great-grandson's birth. He gives you a little attention, correct? But if it's embedded in the protocols of the bureaucracy, as a planner would do, which is the policy, the documents that go, it's like a handbook. I think the example of the street furniture in Mumbai is a case in point, where the Survey sisters created a very, very detailed catalog down to working drawings and specs. And it was made part of the protocol of the municipality, which means if a sponsor came, they had to follow that. So there were distortions, but they were minimum. So then it almost needs that kind of embedding within the protocols of the bureaucracy. So those become the two parts. Maybe they both employed simultaneously. I'm just reflecting on the trajectory of yours, which I have followed for a decade. So I'm now seeing this reach a pinnacle. in terms of its scaling up, and what can one reflect about it looking back at the last 10 years? So there's it's a thought. I don't expect a response. Yeah. But I want to just go to the questions now, because we should involve, there's one person who's asked 10 questions. So let me know. So there's Namita, who has asked questions for Made in Mumbai. How does funding of site property construction further usage and maintenance work in this case, as it's not really a private project? And she also commends you that it's a great presentation in a very short time. And so she just wants to know how, this all works.
How does the funding work?
They're mainly government funded projects. So I think in the yearly budget, only the government sanctions a certain amount for the construction of toilets. And every year they do it. I mean, if you look at the municipal corporation.
So we are appointed basically as consultants. We design for them. We provide all drawings, construction drawings, BOQ, do the site visit. And then it goes for a tender process where their empaneled contractors get to build. And then there is a third tender which goes where operation and maintenance tender, which is given to the third person, which is again part of the tender process. So that's how they are works. And many of them are pay and use toilets where the operation and maintenance agency maintain it and they are charging. And just to mention it, that all of these projects, though they look like these kind of interesting buildings, but they are built at the same cost.
Cost as these other toilets we have shown.
What we showed,
Okay.
So it does not cost much many times to build good architecture. So that's what we try to convey them. And the second thing is also they do not charge any extra money for that. They're charging same 2 rupees and 5 rupees is something they charge. And so it's possible to maintain them. It's just that you need to change a mindset and be kind of committed towards doing it, and it's possible.
And the land belongs to the government, so that's a very big factor.
Yes.
So Mehreen, for you, there are 2 questions. One is from Naila Ahmad. Was the slum school an individual initiative or a public commission? That is one question. Mehreen, for you. And then there is another question that was for you. It's a question from Sonam Letho. Sonam is going to be one of our speakers in the coming weeks, and I'm happy he attended this. And he's asking you, for the informal sector school, how did the community get involved in working on this project? Were the community in that area taught the skills to build similar structures or taught maintenance of the structures? How did they manage the ownership of the facility given to them?
I think I just want to add to that on Sonam's question. I was curious to know how both of you, how both of the practices think about the agency of architecture as a social responsibility. In the case of Made in Mumbai, I was wondering, how did you tackle issues like manual scavenging, especially given the scale you're at? And I think now you have the agency of being able to bring about a systemic change, things that are beyond one toilet now, and how do you look at that when you scale up? And I think Sonam covers the question that I had for Mehreen.
So Mehreen, you please respond first.
Okay, I think so. The first question deal with the funding of the slum school. So actually, before we designed and built that structure, there was an organization with the name of Panchvi Path, because it's a collaborative project. They were already taking classes on the footpath. That's how we have noticed them, because they were, having those classes on the footpath, and that footpath was very near to the house of some of our colleagues as well. So of course they were involved as well. They were working with the community from past many years, and they know the community inside out and very well as well. Then there were also community leaders, because there were few people within the community. It's not a homogeneous one, it's a very heterogeneous community, but still there are a lot of people who think that their kids should get education, and they are the one who were very proactive. So we collaborated with the Panchvi Path initiative as well as with the informal settlement community. And what we did, that the cost estimation was actually divided into 3 of us. So the cost was built by crowdfunding. like the 1/3 of it was covered by the community, the slum dwellers, and then 75% of it was gathered by ourselves, the Architalk, as well as the Pass We Pass initiative. So it was a crowd-funded project, because I don't think the government is at all interested in funding the project, despite of all the promises that they made. So it was a crowd-funded project. So coming to the second question, which was what was the second question?
How did the community get involved? What was the sense of ownership? Okay. And how did it change? How did it change the relationship also of the government looking at the community, which is Pranav's question? That is, what are the systemic changes it triggers?
Okay. So I think I tried to show that in my presentation, but maybe I missed. We started with the community. We said, look, we don't know anything, like the way you live. How do you see life? What are your social spatial dynamics? So we are learning from you. So our first part, which was extensive research into this settlement, was led by the community. So one way the community was involved is that it helped us understand themselves, as well allow us to document all that process in the shape of the two manuals. So in that case, they were very much involved with our process. Then what we did, that we divided ourselves into 3 groups, and each group does have community representative as well. And then we created those 3 designs, which I haven't shown because of the lack of time. And then the community was the one which picked that we think that this one is a better design. So I think the auto ownership was automatically built. They already thought that this school is their own when we included them right from the research project. We included them into the design project. And then again, we were not very much, well aware with the construction with the bamboos as well, because there the main construction material is brick. It's usually cement, it's usually concrete. So they were the ones who said that, okay, we are very comfortable. We'll tell you the kind of bamboos which are available. And in Lahore, we'll tell you what kind of bamboos are the ones which you can use on the facade as well. They also guided us on the joinery detail as well, because bamboo and fabric are the 2 fundamental materials that they are using since centuries to build their, jhugis, their huts as well.
So therefore, basically, it allowed them to get organized. You drew on the local wisdom, so that became a form of participation, and therefore, it had those kinds of impacts. No, that's
actually really... there was a very small fight over where the school is going to be placed.
Oh, I see. Well, that's
there
good,
are
healthy.
2-3 but because there is 2-3 influential, you can say community leaders who were already presented in the, community as well. So one wanted it to be close to its house, the other wanted it to be close to its house. So there was this resolution that they made that, okay, fine, we are going to move the school since you have wheels. So you have to, commit with us that this is going to move, because somehow I think the presence of this structure around their jhuggi is a kind of, they feel elevated. They feel that it is going to give them more respect in the community as well. So there are many interesting dynamics like that.
Thanks. So very quickly, we are running out of time. If you want to respond to Pranav's question, which is, what are the kind of systemic changes that you think you might have affected?
I think changes.
Mehreen, I think you answered it. I would ask Made in Mumbai. Sorry, you answered it. You answered it.
Actually, in terms of, you spoke about the the manual scavenging and how are we dealing with that aspect as an architect. I think if you look at historically, so in the last 5 decades, there has been a lot of innovation in the kind of sanitation technology which you use in case you are not connected to the grid, So there is a lot of innovation that have taken place,
and nowadays there are a lot of starters who have actually approached the municipal corporation, and they are using those robotic kind of systems which are portable and movable, and they have started engaging them.
And there's some local solutions also. It's not a very high tech. There's some very localized, local solution to actually for the sewage kind of treatment.
And just to respond to the idea of scale and things, that how influential are you? I mean, I would like to say that these, in a presentation, it might appear that we have really scaled up and, doing a lot of projects, but these projects are of different cities from different times. So, I mean, we are really not scaled up. Okay. We are still working in 2 projects, 3 projects in different parts of the city or some zone. So we are actually very slow, a set of slow consultants for them. So it's like that. That's why they maybe sometimes they take the concept design and they build it next week, So
well,
that's
you created a completely different impression. We thought you had like 200 flying out of your office.
No, we are doing, you're doing these projects quickly, but you can't. But whatever limited time is required.
No, I understood. I was just joking.
I mean, you can't do it in 1 week. You can do it in 3 months. Like that.
Okay. So look, there's one question which I'm very tempted to just put on the thing, and you can answer it or not answer it, but I just want to record it, which is from Kaikobad. It's a very thoughtful question, and either of you can respond if you want. It says, architecture being a cultural product, how do you define contextual informality and aesthetics, creating memory and belongingness? So it's a question which, I mean, as I understand it, is, informality is one thing. There's a transience to informality. And then you embody responses in architecture, and it does have an impact on identity, belongingness, etc. And that's why I was using the word transitional, provisional. It can be very provisional, that you could say that identity is constructed for 4 years because that informal settlement is going to find formality and they're going to find housing. Or like I was saying, your buildings might become community centers because we would have found other solutions for sanitation, etc. So there's a kind of transience, but how does architecture respond to creating memory and belongingness? Is there any reflections on thought? It's not an easy question, but if you did have any thoughts, I would appreciate a very quick response, and then we'll have to close.
I would like to give an example of the Secunderabad project, which we spoke about. Now, Secunderabad, which is part of Hyderabad, used to have a lot of these clock towers once upon a time. And slowly with the kind of developments, they are kind of getting tucked in somewhere, and they're getting erased over time. So I think this blue building with the clock tower, we thought it would, and there's a memory of always going to railway stations and looking at the clock at what time it is in some sense. So I thought the kind of a gesture of the clock tower or the clock would kind of and actually if you ask everyone there, they recognize the building with the clock. That's become like a part of the kind of.
And also the idea that a lot of these buildings we are trying to make where people should just take over those buildings. That's what we feel is a success, and let them kind of So you have a Bhelwala selling things and things. So that's, I think, of creating sense of place through that.
Mehreen,
yeah, but I also think that these are just not edifices or buildings that creates a sense of belonging, but the experience and the memories that we have in there. And also we know that identity is also not something which is very static. It keeps on, it keeps on evolving. And I think so does, the architecture and other thing as well. I think what can help create a sense of belonging is that the experience that the people have or in these buildings. That's why the same building, communicates different kinds of memories and feelings and sense of belonging to different people as well. So I think, of course, architecture as a structure can contribute, but I think it is the experience that also, matters a lot. And architecture alone cannot create that experience, in my opinion. Of course, it is arguable and one can argue as well. So that's why all these processes, all these approaches, all these activities, different things happening in a place.
Thank you. Thank you very much. No, and this has really been a wonderful discussion. Lots to think about for all of us collectively. I just want to end by saying just 2 or 3 things, quick announcements. One is I was really struck when you talked about your Hyderabad project, and I thought this is wonderful in a forum like this of South Asia, because you almost need to say Hyderabad, India, because I'm looking at Mehreen and she has a Hyderabad in her country. So that's a wonderful thing about a forum like this. So it just struck me as being interesting. I also want to just thank the South Asia students who are really the backbone behind this: Amna, Devashri, Dhruv, Eshna, and Pranav. And thank you guys to have this forum and to start a new season of these lectures, and we hope they'll be fun. And I just want to make 2 quick announcements that our previous lectures, because some of our speakers and others have asked, are already up on YouTube. So if you need to refer to those conversations, you go to, it's been posted in the chat, you go to the South Asia Institute website, and there's a link there which will give you access to those YouTube talks. And our next 10 talks are going to happen over the next 3 months. But next Saturday, we have a Khosla and we have Studio Neba from Nepal and from Sri Lanka. So it's going to be a conversation between those two architects. And then following that, we have Koiles from Pakistan and we have Para from Bangladesh. So it's going to be a really interesting conversations from different perspectives. And our speakers, like the speakers today, we really encourage you to come and participate, because we also are very much, our aspiration is about trying to create a community of architects in the region so that these conversations and exchanges can go on. And your generation needs a platform like this, and these will be relationships we hope that will blossom in the future, and you will keep exchanging ideas. So thanks everyone for participating. Thank you to our speakers, particularly for taking the effort to share your work and to share your insights and experiences. It's absolutely been a wonderful hour and a half. So thank you all, and see you next Saturday.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye.
you so much.